Hello and welcome to Change is Possible podcast. My name is Ani Filipova and I'm your host. When I left my banking career to try something new, the number one question everyone asked me was, how did you find the courage? The thing is, it's not about the courage. It is about knowing what you want and planning for it. That's why I started this podcast, to help you make your career change possible. Each of our guests have done a successful career change, and we are going to discuss practical advice, actionable tips, and inspirational stories that can help you to get unstuck and transition into work that you love. Let's get started. Hi everyone, my guest today is Hannah Genton. Hannah is Berkeley School of Law graduate and a former startup attorney turned entrepreneur. After years of practice in one of Silicon Valley's leading law firms, she realized that regardless of how much she accomplished, it was never quite enough. Additionally, the extra work she had to require to take on left her sacrificing family time, especially after the birth of her first child. And this fueled the belief that there must be a better way to honor both her professional and personal life. And this is why she co-founded a very different law firm. CGL was born with the idea of giving its attorneys an unprecedented level of freedom and autonomy. This meant allowing them to choose where they worked and commit to a set number of hours each day. And it was a success. And now CGL offers on-demand legal services for companies and law firms alike. Today we are going to speak about her experiences and lessons learned from leaving a billion-dollar law firm and creating her own company and life. Hi, Hannah. I'm delighted to say hello and to welcome you at the podcast. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great this morning. I really appreciate being here today.
Great. Thank you. And I can't wait to start. There is a lot to talk about. Mm-hmm. And let's go to the very beginning. Can you tell us why you decided to study law? And what was your first impression of the profession when you started having your internships?
Sure. So I wish I could say that my plan was to study law all along, but it actually wasn't. When I graduated university, my undergrad, I worked for a little bit and was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was working as a major gift fundraiser at the time. And I always had a passion about business and an interest in business. So I thought I would apply to business school, but I had heard a lot of things about business school being expensive and not necessarily like you could get more experience being hands-on. But anyway, I was going through the process of applying for business school, also to kind of hedge my bets because I like to have a number of plans in place. I also thought that I would pursue law school because many people said that it's a great degree to have. You can use it for different things, and it's easier to transition from law to business than business to law.
Yeah.
So throughout that process, I was preparing for applications for both, and I ended up getting into Berkeley law through kind of the application process. And that was such a great opportunity. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Berkeley and study law. I actually really enjoyed my time at Berkeley. I made some amazing connections and friends. But to be honest, I was never incredibly passionate about the law. And what ended up happening is throughout kind of law school, there are opportunities to apply for big law firms. You do this program or this kind of thing called OCI, where you do, it's like speed dating for big law firms. And through that, I ended up getting an opportunity at Cooley in Silicon Valley, working with emerging companies. Again, it was practicing law. And so I thought, I'm not sure that I want to do this, but it gives me an opportunity to work with some incredible companies in Silicon Valley. That's great. So that was kind of how I ended up. That was my experience in law school and kind of how I ended up into my full-time position as a corporate associate in Silicon Valley.
All right. So when you started your full-time job, was it what you expected? So what did you like about it? What you couldn't stand about it? That was a bit more.
Yeah. So I had heard, that big law was intense and that you worked a lot. I had no idea really what that meant. I was used to law school and working very hard, but I had times where I slept in my office. So when they say intense and a lot of hours, it was a lot of hours. I worked almost every weekend. And so I guess that my expectations of how much I would be working, I thought, oh, it's a lot, but I didn't realize how much it was. At a big law firm, the clients are paying top dollar. So the expectation that you're incredibly responsive is there. They're paying top dollar for premium services. So there's just a lot of pressure on the team, not only to perform very well, but to be incredibly responsive. So that was, I think, something that I didn't quite expect. I actually, in a bizarre way, kind of enjoyed that as well. Like I really enjoyed performing and doing very well. So there was stimulation there. Things that I loved about my job were connecting with my clients and getting the opportunity to speak with these brilliant CEOs and entrepreneurs. That experience was when I started thinking, I don't know that I want to be a full-time lawyer, I'm not sure, is when I would listen to the problems of the CEOs and entrepreneurs. And I would actually kind of envy the problems that they were navigating and really find myself focused on the business solutions and creative ways that they could come up with resolutions to those problems. And so that's where I saw myself kind of being drawn toward. That was the most interesting part of my job. Yeah, so I think that answers kind of what was hard and what I didn't expect and what I also enjoyed about it.
So how long did you work?
I was there for 5 years.
5 years. And would you say you were working most of the weekends? How intense was it?
Yes. So I worked most of the weekends. That was actually an aha moment for me. And my journey is after my first son was born, I had a moment. I was working outside in San Francisco. It was a nice day. I was working outside. It was a Sunday. And my son was playing in his little bouncer kind of next to me. And I was talking to, I can't remember, one of my friends who's not a lawyer. And I said, oh, I really like Sundays. They're pleasant to work because I'm not getting so much email. She was like, you're working on Sunday, like you're working. And I thought, oh, my son is here next to me. It's a really nice. And she was the one that was like, you're working all the time. There's kind of a distorted story or way that you're perceiving that. And that was a seed for me of like, maybe.
Yeah. No, I can imagine, because all other people, weekend is not for working. And for you think this is normal, right? And
exactly.
You go through your days and think, oh, this is how it is. But it's actually not.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess this is what pushed you to start thinking about what is next. And is this life? How did you decide to leave and establish your own company? And you can talk about the driving factors, everything that happened.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I was working a lot, and at a certain point, it stopped being stimulating and was mostly just stressful. And I wasn't really happy. The pressure was intense. I was commuting. I wasn't really spending time with my son. He was struggling. He'd have a hard time going to sleep at night, and I felt like I was missing out. And I didn't expect motherhood to affect me so much. So before I had my son, I thought, I'll get a nanny. It's fine. I'll just be working and it's all going to work out fine. And then when I had my son, it very much shifted my perspective. And one of the things that I thought a lot was, how can I honestly look at this person, my son, and tell him, go after things that make you happy in life or pursue passions that you're interested in if I'm not actually doing that?
Yeah.
So that was a moment, a kind of coming to terms moment of I'm not really living authentically. And then with the pressure of work, so I actually posed a question to my firm saying, my son is only little for so long. I'm just looking for some more flexibility during this time. I want to be really present. And there were no opportunities for that. There was really no flexibility in the way that I could work. And so I left, and I left with no plan. I didn't have a job set up. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so that was incredibly scary. But I left with the thought of there has to be a better way. Like there has to be a way that people who still want to work, parents, not just mothers, parents that still want to work, but also want to be present with their kids, have to have an opportunity to do this. And so that's really kind of the feeling that I had going on when I left. And then I connected with a very good friend of mine from Berkeley Law. And she had left the law. She was at a big law firm as well. She had left the law, and we were having a conversation of, God, it's such a shame that we've both left the law. We worked so hard. And she was kind of exploring different options. And like I said, at this time, I wasn't working. And we said, why don't we just practice together a little casually? So there wasn't like this mission behind CGL when we started. We said, let's practice, we'll do it together. It'll feel safe. And we had clients like right away. Very fortunate. And then we started working more and more, and we got to the point where we had too much work for the two of us, and we were working too much. And so that was when we decided to bring on our first contractor attorney. And she was a single mom and an incredible attorney, one of the best attorneys I've ever worked with. And she said to us, wow, I have been looking for something like this for so long, because we worked remotely. We had flexibility with our schedule. We told her, we don't care when you come into the office. If you have to take care of your kids, that's fine. Just get the work done, do it well. And when she said that, like, I have been really looking for something like this. For me, that lit the kind of spark for the passion, because I thought, oh, if we did this for ourselves, we could do this for so many other people. And so that's really where the mission behind CGL was born, because we are focused on really providing quality of life for our attorneys, and with the belief that life is not stagnant, right? Like, our lives are constantly changing, yet the employment situation expects that we should work in the same way all the time. And that's just not realistic. It causes people to burn out. Your employees are not happy. Work quality suffers. And so that was really kind of the model behind CGL, is how do we be an empathetic company that supports people in kind of the various stages of their life.
Yeah. Wow. This is like a fairy tale. The things happened without you planning it. It's amazing. And how did you manage this period financially? How did you prepare for that?
Yeah. So I was very fortunate because my husband was working at the time. And so we had, the financial support there, but it was still an impact. And it required planning because, we're living in San Francisco. We had a house in San Francisco. We had 2 kids. And so even though I was fortunate to have my husband's income, his income at the time couldn't support our expenses.
Yeah.
So there were conversations, there was planning. I'd say the most planning actually was on the financial side of how do we set up some runway. And so the thought was like, I'm going to quit. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I trust I can figure something out. And here's X number of months that we had, and we saved, and we cut some expenses that we didn't need. And we just made some thoughtful compromises to invest in that time off. And that, for me, I think that planning allowed me a lot more creative freedom to not have the financial pressure of, I've got to get a job or I've got to figure something out. So the financial planning, I think, was a good step.
Yeah, well, I think with all my guests, when I speak about it, everybody has planned so they can have at least 1 or 2 years for the whatever business they plan to start delivering income.
Exactly.
So it's so much easier in that interim period to not think about finances also, because you have to think of so many other things.
Yeah.
If you have the pressure of finances also, it's terrible.
And you think of it as an investment, so during that time where we were kind of saving up or investing more, you use a silly example of like, oh, I want to buy these shoes. It's like, no, I'd actually want to invest in the time I have to, so you use it as not like, oh, I'm feeling restricted or I feel like I'm cutting the quality of life. It's no, I'm making an investment in my future and in my career. And so I think that narrative really certainly helped us think of it in a more positive way.
Great. So when you were establishing your company, were there any obstacles? I'm sure there were some, right? And how did you overcome them?
Yes. So when we first started the firm, one of the first things we did is Google how to start a law firm. So we had no idea what we were doing. We knew how to service clients, but we didn't have any, my founder and we didn't have any business experience into how to set things up. So the logistics of setting up a law firm, there's a lot that goes into it. And this has been the case my the whole journey of CGL is I've always said that I feel like I'm just like hanging on to the back of a train that's moving very fast. And I'm just hanging on. And as so long as I keep doing what I need to do to hang on, I'm fine. And it's like always kind of playing a bit of a game of catch up. So I had to get really comfortable. In the law, you often know the answer, or there's a rule, there's a way that things are done. As an entrepreneur, it's kind of a blank slate and you figure it out. And so shifting that approach, I think, was initially a challenge. It was far more interesting for me. I would say I really like the problem solving side, but I had to re-educate and retrain a lot of learned behaviors that I had from my last career. So I'd say that was, a challenge. Another challenge was we got a lot of, I think, criticism or doubt when we first started. We had someone who called us mommy and associates. That's really cute that you're starting a law firm. And so there was a lot of noise coming to us that sometimes, I'd have moments of like, can we really do this? Is this possible? The normal, I think, doubt that anyone who's doing something that no one's done before, you have this strong vision and then you have moments of like, oh no, we can do this. So that's hard. And I think you have to have a lot of trust and also being really comfortable failing and failing forward. We've had a million ideas. Many of them have been great and have worked out, and many of them have not worked. And just learning what you need to learn from those failures and moving forward, I think getting comfortable in that space is incredibly important, especially when you're transitioning into something new.
Wow, interesting. So you had people who were calling you, oh, that's cute. Unbelievable. Huh?
Yeah. That's such a slap to the face, that one was. But it was quite satisfying to come back 3.5 years later, 2 years. Now we've been in business almost 5 years. But in our second year, we were quite substantial firm. And to come back to that person and sharing what we were doing, that was a little satisfying, of like, who is it now? But yeah, there's a lot of noise out there.
That must have felt really, really great. And so now, 5 years on, as you said, you're an entrepreneur. So was it as you expected? What was the thing that you never expected at all?
Yes. So one, I never expected, if someone told me, 5 years ago that I'd be running a law firm, I would say they were crazy. So I never expected that. I also didn't expect how much I would love my job and that was even possible, so I've been working my whole life and always a lot of times just in jobs because of an opportunity that came up, or you kind of just find yourself in these positions. And I never felt that passionate about them, but doing something that really aligns with my values, which is what CGL does. It's very stimulating to me. So I do a lot of the business development side. A lot of my partners at the firm think that that's insane. They're not interested in doing that. I thrive in that environment. I love connecting with others. I love building things.
Right.
I didn't expect to be able to do something that I loved and how invigorating it is, So even now I'm still working a lot and I'm so charged by my work. And I have 3 kids now and I come home, I'm working at home, but I kind of leave my job and I feel like I have energy. And also I feel like I have that authentic voice to share with my children and inspire them to go after what's meaningful to them. So I guess I didn't expect to find such fulfillment from my profession.
Gosh. Well, this is what the corporate life does to us, right? In a sense, limiting our horizons, so to say.
Yeah, it can put you in a box and you think, I was just having a conversation with a friend about this too, I think that some folks really thrive in the corporate world and that's wonderful. Others, I feel I'm a very creative person and not a very following the status quo type. But for me, that was kind of suffocating, yet the world places so much value on kind of just that one type. You work this, you go up the corporate ladder. There's a very systematic way that your profession should develop. And I think we're starting to see since the pandemic and people are kind of changing their perspectives, I think we're starting to see that so much of like your professional career isn't this like linear step up a ladder. There's a lot of diversity that happens in that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was the same when I quit my job. It just like so many other things opened in front of me. I didn't even thought that they're possible.
Exactly.
And it keeps happening. It doesn't stop, it just keeps happening. And just one conversation can push you in a completely different direction that you never expected you would go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you describe what is a typical day for you as a founding partner in a law firm?
Yeah. So I am actually not practicing law at all really anymore, which I like that. And so I have a team of partners and attorneys that do a lot of the legal work here, which they also like. And I do a lot of the business development. So that means that I am on pitch calls most of the day. I'm on partnership calls. Most of my day consists of calls and chatting with people. So I spend a lot of time on Zoom or meeting people. Now I'm starting to meet folks in person. I do run our marketing and sales department. So I'm overseeing a lot of the initiatives that happen there, as well as kind of our content plan. CGL has a podcast. It's called the CGL podcast, and I record that weekly. That's kind of my day, but it's a lot of calls and talking with people.
Great. And you have plenty of time for family?
I do. Yes. So I'm very thoughtful about time management. So I block out time in my calendar. So I block out time for exercise. I block out time with my family. I have breakfast and dinner with my kids every day. I can't say that it's this like beautiful sit down dinner, but we're all together.
Yeah, exactly.
And I carve out time for other things. So I also do a lot of hospice volunteering. I'm in the process of getting my death doula certification. So I have other passions outside of work. And in order to manage all of the things, time management is critical. So I calendar, my days very thoughtfully, and my assistant helps with things where she knows, if I have, an event for my child, that's not something that I'm going to reschedule. And I think the other piece with that though is, and I've been guilty of this, is it's easy for me to fill up that non-work time with work things. That call comes in, whatever. I have yoga on Fridays, and then that call comes in and I could take the call, and should I just reschedule yoga? And what I've found is that not only do you need to show up for the calls with other people and the events for other people, like I'd never blow off a call with someone else, but also quickly blow off yoga. I shifted that a while back and said, no, I'm not blowing off yoga, just as I wouldn't blow off a call for someone else, or I'm not blowing off whatever, my volunteering or these things that are important to me. And so prioritizing that time for yourself has helped me maintain balance. My job is still very busy. I would say in many ways it can be stressful.
Yeah.
And let it take over. It's a lot of responsibility and a lot of things to think about. But by managing my time, I think that that's really allowed me to recharge and have the energy I need to handle whatever problem comes in, because there's always problems. Yeah. As a business owner and entrepreneur, it's a lot of problem solving.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I completely agree with that, because we often forget about the me time, the time that I use to do things that I like and that are good for my health. Mm-hmm. And we always kind of very easily scrap this.
Yeah. And for me, I like to work and I like to do my work well. And when I shifted the perspective of, these things are actually helping me do my job better.
Yeah.
Understand the importance of the investment. It's not like, I'm slacking because I'm going to yoga. It's like I'm investing in myself, which helps me perform better at my career. This is actually good for work if I go to yoga, So I think that it's just shifting. We live in a culture that so often how much you work equates to your value. We live in culture, certainly Silicon Valley. And that was a lot of the retraining I had to do was, people talk about how much they work and that they only slept 3 hours and they've hacked this whole thing. And you think, oh my gosh, I'm not valuable. I worked a 45-hour week. I must be a slacker. And I just don't think that that's true.
Yeah. No, amazing how we start thinking this way, right? And people always kind of outbid. Oh, I worked 50 hours. Oh, I worked every weekend. Oh, and it's the more you work, then means you're the best. But actually, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
What is a very tough period in your career when you had to draw all your strengths to carry on? Because when I was looking in your LinkedIn profile, and it seems like everything is like, oh, you knew what you're doing and everything was going great, and you found your company and everything was absolutely going perfectly. But we all know that's not true. So what was this moment when you were like really, really difficult moment and you had to persevere?
Yes. So when I was a first year associate, you go through the whole process of taking the bar exam, and it's a very public process. Everyone knows that you took the bar exam. Everyone knows when results are posted. And that Thursday, when everyone's results were posted, we all knew they came at 6:00. Everybody left the office before, just in case they got bad news. I didn't end up leaving the office because I was working on something. I check on my phone, even though I said I'm going to check the results as soon as I get home. I couldn't wait. I checked the results on my phone and there's nothing. There's nothing under my name. And the realization was I didn't pass the bar. And so all of my other associate friends, all the, first years, they're celebrating. People are sending messages back and forth. Oh, did you pass? Did you pass? And I had this moment of like, wow, I failed. And I failed super publicly. Like there's no way that I can not share with everyone that I failed. And I'm at this job. I just started this job and I have to tell all these partners that I failed. Like,
oh God.
I had a moment, I was driving home from work. So I worked in Palo Alto and I lived in San Francisco, and I was driving home from work, and that night I called my husband and I was like, I'm just going to quit. This is fine. I'm just going to quit. I can't go back to work. Like, there's more dying. I'm just going to crawl in a hole and disappear. And he was very supportive in not saying, you don't need to quit, like you'll be able to pass. And then I sent a note to a partner who was kind of my mentor at the law firm, because he sent me a note and he said, and I wrote him and I was like, I failed the bar exam. And his response back to me was like, it's fine, you'll pass the next time. And he was so casual about it. And that was the moment, because I was beating myself up about it.
Yeah.
And so much like shame and embarrassment and all of that. And he was so casual about it that I realized like I was the only one that had these expectations on myself. So yeah, I would say that was a very difficult moment. And then going back the second time though, and studying for it, because the law firm gave me time off to study for the exam. The first time that I studied for the bar, I worked nonstop. I was very stressed. I didn't take time to exercise. I wasn't eating healthy. I was just like grinding. Second time I took the exam, I said, you know what? Whatever happens this time, like we'll see what happens, because the law firms only give you 2 times. Basically, if you fail the second time, you lose your job. And I thought, I'm not going to grind this time. I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to study whatever I said, maybe 8 hours a day. I'm going to treat it like my job. I'm going to take the weekends off. And I followed that approach. And as much as there was so much pressure on it for me to succeed, the way that I approached it, one, I didn't have this extreme amount of stress in studying for it. I actually really kind of got into my rhythm and my schedule, and I passed the second time. And that also was a realization for me, although I forgot it very quickly once I went back to work. But I did have this realization of like, oh, this being healthy and balancing your life while you work, you can still overcome these incredible challenges while not working all day, every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting how we as people, we do so many good things and so many things that we could be proud of, but nobody says nothing and we just kind of move on. But we fail one thing, one exam, and then we beat ourselves up as if the end of the world has come.
Exactly.
And that's another thing that we have to kind of be more forgiving in such cases, because it doesn't make any sense to beat yourself up for the one time you failed.
Exactly. And also failing the bar the first time actually was such a gift for me, because going up to that point, academically, I was always a really good student. I achieved. I was a perfectionist. I worked very hard. So I kind of benefited from doing well in things. And so this was like my first real failure, certainly academically or professionally. And I'm so grateful for it because failing so publicly and such a big failure. Now I'm like, I don't know, let's try it. And if it fails, whatever, you fail, So, and failure too, I know this is said so much, but I just think failure as a concept is it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Every failure I see is a great learning opportunity. You have an opportunity to learn something. What could I have done better? It's not end of days you failed and that's the end of the story. It's really kind of your perspective and how you choose to embrace the opportunity.
No, absolutely. And it's just the social norm, which we have to change because that's how society perceives, failed. It's a bad thing, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And in your life and working life, who are these people that helped you? Mentors, family members, bosses, helped you really go through options and decide on what to do next?
Yes. So I would say my husband, Val, he's my best friend and just such a source of support. And throughout this whole process, he was like, I love you no matter what, whatever you do. I had such an identity tied to my profession. And when I left, even there was this lost moment of I'm not working. Who am I?
Yeah.
And so he really helped me understand that my job was not who I am. I'd say my kids as well, without their knowledge, have been a huge source of my inspiration and support because they, not intentionally, but have instilled this responsibility in me to be authentic. And I want my children to be happy and professionally fulfilled. And so if I'm miserable at my job, but I'm telling them, go after your dreams, it doesn't line up. So I'd say that just their presence has been a huge source of inspiration. And my co-founder as well, so she and I are very good friends and we had no idea what we were doing, as I mentioned, and going through this, we've had many moments of I don't know. And, so she and I we have this, we always call it the yin and yang. And it doesn't matter when one of us is ever kind of freaking out, the other is very calm and it just happens naturally. So when one of us is stressed out about something, the other is actually, here's why it's going to be fine. And we really balance each other out. And so I think that that's always been a huge part of CGL's success as well, as just having this amazing kind of foundation that no one I have.
Great. Well, it was an amazing discussion and we are at the end of the podcast. And can we close it with 3 takeaways for our listeners? What are the 3 most important things for people who are planning a change, such a big change of leaving a corporate and starting a new life? What would you recommend?
Let's see. So the first I would say is if you're leaving and you don't know what you're going to do, I would say that financial plan, having, something in place so that you're not stressed about finances, allows you that creative freedom and that time to pause intentionally and figure out, what you're going to do. So I would say that that's an important one. The second I would say is don't be afraid to fail and understand that that's part of the process and see every failure as an opportunity to get better and to learn. And the third I would say is take the plunge, take the plunge. It's scary. And yes, you're not going to be able to perfectly plan the outcome, but do it. Take the plunge, see what happens. There's always an opportunity as well to go back to the corporate world. I get a lot of peace of mind that if something happened, I could go back to a law firm. I have that. You have all the years of experience wherever you've worked. And so that exists. It's you don't lose that when you leave. If that plan B or that security blanket makes you feel better, remember everything that you've accomplished thus far.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, from my perspective, it's worth trying it and seeing. And then, if that doesn't work, you can pivot again and it'll be easier to pivot the second time, I'm sure.
No, thanks. These are very, very good points to close the podcast with. Thank you so much, Hannah. And I wish you absolutely all the best for the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Change is Possible podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If there is any topic that you're interested in or would like to nominate a guest, please drop me a message via LinkedIn. Have a great day. Bye.